So hi, everyone. Thank you for coming in tonight. I'm Allison Atkins. I'm the Assistant Director at the Kennebunk Free Library. Thank you for joining us for the fifth in a six-part series discussing Maine's Climate Action Plan. Tonight, we'll be talking about community resilience. You can join us back here in 2 weeks on May 18th for the final session, which is coastal and marine issues. We do have everyone but the presenters muted, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. If you're not very familiar with Zoom, all you do is hover over the bottom of the screen, a little menu will pop up, and there's a chat button right in the middle. You can just click on that. So I want to thank the presenters for being here tonight and the Planeteers for all of the work they've put into organizing this. So now I'm going to turn you over to Tom Barry from the Planeteers to get us going.
Hi, thank you, Allison, and thank you all for joining us, as Allison mentioned. I am Tom Barry, and for those who don't know the Planeteers of Southern Maine, we're an ad hoc grassroots group that got together 5 years ago to put our longstanding concerns about environmental issues into action. We invite you to visit our website at www.someplaneteers.org or our Facebook page at Some Planeteers to get an idea of the kinds of projects that we've done in the past and that we plan to do in the future. A central element in all of our endeavors has been to draw connections from the global level of issues to that of the community. And this event tonight is no exception. This evening, we're going to be learning about the work that's being done by a number of us in this part of the state related to community resilience. So I'd like to take a minute to let you know a little bit about our first guest. Julia Dundorf has directed the New England Grassroots Environment Fund since October 2014. Increasingly, the work of the Grassroots Fund seeks to achieve environmental justice and equity through deep participatory grant making and shifting power and access to resources to marginalized communities most affected by environmental threats. Julia attributes the roots of her passion for environmental justice and resilient, equitable communities to growing up on an off-grid farm in northern New Hampshire. Julia, welcome.
Thank you, and I'm going to share my screen right now. It's always so funny to hear yourself talked about. Really happy to be here and that you are welcoming me in from across the border. I'm calling in from New Hampshire. And can everybody see my screen okay? Yeah, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Grassroots Fund and really how we look at resilience, including climate resilience in our work, and that at the grassroots level. And we can keep this pretty informal. I think we're going to have some questions after the speakers. Just a little bit of grounding on who we are. We are a public charity, a foundation, a pooled fund. So we are not endowed. And we were created 25 years ago. It's our anniversary this year to get resources deeper into communities for furthering environmental work, and more, as has already been shared, that work is really looking at the intersections with environmental justice and social justice issues. So we're funding we have funded thousands of groups across the region, across the 6 New England states. And yet last year, for some reasons I'll mention, we had a huge year of grant making of over 450 groups, again, across the 6 New England states that we funded to be doing this work. Sorry, I got a frozen screen. We're learning a lot along this journey. I'm going to talk a little bit about our guiding practices in a moment. This shows you a screenshot of our map, which is, I think, super fun. It's searchable, so you can go onto the map and see all the great happenings across the region and click on groups and find more information about the work. You probably are going to recognize a whole bunch, maybe even some that are on the call with us today. This has been quite a journey for us. As we, about 4 years ago, we really turned the mirror on ourselves as part of philanthropy, as part of really of kind of dominant culture, dominant white culture in philanthropy and the environment, to really look at what it meant to ground that work in environmental justice. And this is the EPA's definition. It's in the very definition that meaningful involvement must be centered on those most impacted in communities in order to do environmental work. That isn't the approach of traditional environmental work. Environmental justice is rooted in Black civil rights organizing coming out of the 60s and looks at it in a very different way. And so leaning into that work, we set about creating a set of guiding principles and guiding practices. And this is our layout, our schematic of that work. And the area these are all equity focused. It's looking at in grassroots organizing at the environmental level, whether it's climate resilience or food system work, which I would say is also part of climate resilience. How are we as an organization, as a funder, as a member of the environmental community, and how are our grantees and applicants really looking at these elements of their work and our work? How are we shifting power in the decisions that are being made as an organization? How are we really looking at centering just transition principles that really look at those most impacted in communities? And these practices are very transparent on our website. And that one of the ways, for instance, that we shifted power, and an invitation to anybody on the call, is we do not make the decisions about our grant dollars, and our board does not make the decisions. They ceded the power. We do an open call for reviewers of applications. Again, anybody can review our applications, score them, and help us really decide where the resources that we raise are going to be distributed in communities. And we feel that is essential to addressing environmental justice in communities. So putting equity at the center, this is a definition that we work with. There are many definitions, and less about the specific definition and more about what it means to be building healthy, resilient, safe communities is at the center of this, and who is part of our communities and part of our groups. And just a little bit on this is over the past year, we've had a lot of opportunities to listen and learn, and I say we collectively, about disparities and vulnerabilities in communities. And these disparities and vulnerabilities will only be amplified by the climate crisis. And communities of color, Black, Indigenous community members continue to be by far disproportionately impacted. This is probably not news to folks on the call today. Yet the decision makers at all levels of our communities are still coming from a more dominant white culture, often male dominated and upper middle class. In order to address climate resilience, we have to tackle who's invited and who feels welcome to make decisions in our communities at all layers of the work. We believe it is that significant that in order to get to climate resilience or community resilience, this is an essential part of work in our communities. The past year has given us so many examples around solidarity-focused mutual aid efforts in communities, just amazing brilliance of community members rolling up their sleeves, helping one another, being there for each other in hearts, in minds, in resources. Perhaps some of you have been involved in some of those efforts. And we see and are actually working on a project to really make the connections between that kind of mutual aid effort in a time of crisis and the kinds of efforts that communities will need in order to weather the storms, literally and figuratively, of the climate crisis ahead. And community resilience, and I'll wrap up and make sure there's plenty of time for others. At the center of all of this is a belief that lived experience is expertise. That wherever we're coming from, and that could be literally what country you're coming from, what region, what background, that is expertise that we all have to offer into the work of community resilience. And through that framework of diverse lived experiences, is the only way that we are going to get to true and sustained resilience in our communities. So I would love to go on, but I want to make sure there's plenty of time for other presenters. And I'll just share my contact information as well.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Julia. And Julia and everyone else who has any links that they want to put into the chat, please feel free to do that. And anyone in the listening and viewing audience, if you have references that you'd like to put in the chat, please do. Thank you again, Julia. Our next guest is Jessica Brunicini. And Jessica is the Margaret Davidson Graduate Fellow at the Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve. She is also a PhD candidate at Michigan State University. Her research explores the connections between community resilience and public participation in decision-making about responding to the impacts of climate change. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really excited that Julia's presentation was a perfect setup for mine. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
And we didn't plan that, did we?
No, we didn't, but that worked out super well. So I'm going to talk with you a bit today about my work, which looks at the connections between participation and resilience. But before I do that, I did want to tell you just a little bit about the Margaret Davidson Graduate Fellowship. This is a newly established 2-year program through NOAA's Office of Coastal Management. The program pairs a graduate student, either a master's student or a PhD student, with one of the 29 national estuarine research reserves around the country to address a coastal management question through a collaborative science project. And my project with the Wells Reserve is focused on learning more about the challenges of developing adaptation strategies and relocation policies, including methods that we can use to engage communities in dialogues that build resilience. So how do we build resilience in communities during times of change? Researchers at the Stockholm Resilience Center argue that there are 7 key principles for building resilience in systems that are interacting between people and nature, or as lots of people in academia will say, social ecological systems. These 7 principles, which you can see here, include things like managing connectivity between people and ecosystems, fostering systems thinking, and promoting interconnected governance. My research focuses on principle 6, which is broadening participation. So how does broadening participation help to build community resilience? Well, for one example, we can look to public participation in environmental assessment and decision-making, which is a very well-established practice for improving policy and planning outcomes. Participation helps to build relationships and trust between people, which strengthens community networks. It can lend legitimization to and support of resilience projects, programs, and policies. It aids in the process of learning about a problem, including what Julia was saying when we think about experiential knowledge as expertise, because it helps us to identify and increase understanding of issues that might otherwise be overlooked or ignored by people who are in power. And of course, it is also a core principle of democratic systems where citizens have the right and the responsibility to participate. However, that is not to say that participation is a panacea or a silver bullet solution, because participatory processes can be plagued by power dynamics that can further reinforce inequality or marginalization if they are left unaddressed. There are also issues that are related to access, and that's not only access in the sense of when and where a meeting might be held, but also whether or not the language that is used during these meetings or these processes is accessible to people. And then additionally, the purpose and the process of participation matters. In other words, who participates and how. There is a spectrum of different participatory approaches, and in some cases, participation can actually be used as a way to placate or even tokenize people. So it's not a panacea. Another way that broadening participation helps to build resilience, and one way that we can address those issues of tokenization and marginalization, is also to link public participation with procedural equity and justice. So it can help address justice and equity issues, particularly among communities who are frequently marginalized in or disenfranchised from decision-making processes. Participation is central to the concept of procedural justice and equity, which is just one dynamic or dimension of environmental justice. Procedural justice is concerned with the processes and the procedures of decision-making, including who participates, what types of resources and access to power people have, and whether or to what extent their involvement shapes policy or planning outcomes. And so what does any of this have to do with my Davidson Fellowship project at the Reserve? My plan is to explore the effect of broadening participation by testing out a process for decision-making about climate change adaptation that is modeled on deliberative democracy approach. The deliberative approach refers to a dialogue-based communication process that brings together citizens, different types of subject experts, decision makers, and other key stakeholders. And in this context, deliberation focuses on how problems are defined and understood, what the range of possible solutions might be, which solution or solutions should be pursued, and who should have the responsibility for implementing them. Deliberative processes foster learning and perspective shifting as people come together to understand the nature of problems and the dynamics of proposed solutions through the eyes and experiences of other participants. These types of processes can also serve as capacity building exercises for citizens as they either develop or strengthen their sense of agency and learn about political processes and feel like they have the possibility to take action on issues that they care about afterwards. So I am aiming to pilot this process with a community in Southern Maine sometime this fall, and I'd be really happy to talk about it further with anyone that might be interested. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention, and I am including my contact information on the screen, so please do feel free to get in touch.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Boy, you weren't kidding. What you were presenting and Julia's talk, there is quite a bit of overlap there, I think, and intricacy of thought. It's really impressive. So thank you again. Our next guest is Kate Wallace, and Kate is the programs director at the Resilience Hub in Portland, where she facilitates permaculture design courses, organizes community building events like plant and harvest swaps, skill shares, and permablitz work parties, which she will explain when she gets on stage right now. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Jessica and Julia. I'm really honored to be on this panel with you all. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. And first, let's see if I can share my screen here. Oh, actually, let's go back to the beginning. There we go. So I, like Tom said, I work at the Resilience Hub, where I organize community events. And since I only have a few minutes, I'm just going to dive in and share with you all a range of projects that the Resilience Hub has been involved in, just to give you maybe a sense of what our vision for a resilient community looks like. So I'll start by talking about work parties and what we call permablitzes. So the Resilience Hub focuses on and teaches permaculture design, which is a process for designing ecosystems that mimic nature and also have a place for humans and support humans as well as the myriad other creatures with whom we share the planet. That's a really soundbite definition. There's a lot more to that than to permaculture than that. But a permablitz is essentially implementing a permaculture design in one day with a focused group of people. And these are events that gather communities, we gather neighbors, we've done private residential sites, and we've also done these work parties in community gardens and other public sites around the city of Portland. So we gather anywhere from 20 to, we've had over 100 participants come and transform a site from what could be like open lawn, and we transform the site into a the beginnings of a biodiverse, rich permaculture ecosystem, growing food, medicine, and other things, building soil, sequestering carbon. And so these events involve in regular times, lots of shared food, neighbors meeting neighbors. We're really trying to build resilience at not only the individual and household level, but also at the community level by creating connections between people when the times are good, so that when the times are not so good, those connections already exist. So the benefits of permablitzes and work parties are they're vast. And the word permablitz comes from permaculture and then a blitz, which is like an applied or an application of energy in a very focused way, right? So, so these work parties are modeled after traditional barn raisings, and they've been really successful, and it's hard to even quantify what has grown out of them over the years. Here's another image of a site that was transformed in a day. This was back in 2015. So also in 2015, the Resilience Hub incubated the Maine Tool Library, which has now grown to encompass hundreds of members. And it's essentially a lending library of things. So yard tools, building tools, kitchen supplies. They define a tool as a thing that translates your imagination to reality. And the goal is to lessen the environmental impact of tool transport, extraction, disposal, and consumption. Also reducing economic barriers for homeowners, small businesses, immigrants, makers, and artists, and then multiplying the social benefits of active community and the DIY mentality, the maker culture. So the tool library has been incredibly successful, and there are people like the Brunswick Curtis Memorial Library now is doing a tool library that's based on this model. So we really think that this is a model that can be replicated in other communities in a really profound way. The Mount Joy Community Orchard is a public, free-to-pick orchard that's located in the East End in Portland. Right now, I think there are like 300 different trees, shrubs, edible plants that have been planted over the last 10 or so years. A lot of the trees are starting to bear fruit now, and this project was spearheaded by a core group of volunteers in conjunction with the city of Portland. And so in recent years, the orchard has expanded to include rows of annual vegetables as well. And last year, the orchard partnered with Presente Maine to distribute some of that produce to communities that were impacted by the pandemic. So this orchard is open to anyone who wants to come and pick, and there have been a lot of outreach efforts to teach people about these different fruits and how to use them. And so I just think, again, this is a model that could be replicated in other parts of the state and have really profound benefits. Here's another image of folks working in the orchard. It's a really beautiful spot overlooking the Back Bay. So part of what we're doing here is we're teaching old and new living skills. And the Resilience Hub ultimately is a network of people who are sharing skills with each other. And the idea is that, this myth of self-sufficiency is that it's a myth, right? We need each other to be more resilient. Especially facing the challenges that lie ahead. So just a couple more quick things. In the face of COVID, we instituted a garden mentorship. So thinking about knowledge also as an asset that can be transferred and given. And so connecting people who have lots of garden experience or permaculture experience with people who are looking to start gardening, which there are many now. So that's been really positive. And then also the Maine Landshare project, which is a collaboration between Presente Maine, Land in Common, and the Resilience Hub. And it's a way of connecting people who do not have access to land with people who have land and who are looking for people to grow food, to grow medicine, to grow other plants there. And so what the Maine Landshare project does is to facilitate that connection and to create a framework for how to work together with the goal of ultimately increasing land access for folks. And that was really successful last year. The Maine Landshare project connected gardeners with land and support resources across 15 sites in Maine, and 80% of those supported BIPOC, trans, and low-income gardeners. So we are involved in that again this year, and we'll see where that goes. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening, and please get in touch if you're interested in any of those initiatives. Yeah, I'll put my email address in the chat too.
That would be great. Boy, I'm blown away. Kate, are there other entities like the Resilience Hub throughout Maine? I see in the chat, Andrea was talking about that she's familiar with this idea in the Hudson Valley, but is there any other groups in Maine doing what you're doing? There's so many facets to what you do. It's incredible.
Yeah, I don't think that there are other groups that are doing all of those things, but there are definitely groups that are doing projects like that. Like I know that there's a public orchard in Washington, Maine, that is focused on native edible plants. And there are permaculture groups that some are more loosely organized and some are a little bit more tightly organized, like the Hub with our network of people. But really, we owe a lot of the Hub's legacy to Lisa Fernandez, who was an incredible organizer, and she's the communications director now at Food Solutions New England. So I inherited that.
Well, I think I don't know if you folks have tried to document this like in any kind of printed format or something where other people can model what you're doing, and
Yeah. Sorry, Tom, I don't know if you got cut out or not. So we have documented the permablitzes specifically, and we're in the process of creating a manual that can be used in other communities. There have been permablitzes in other communities, and specifically, I think in York, there were some folks that were organizing blitzes, and also up in the Farmington area. And we have been doing those for long enough that we really do actually have like a pretty standard template that we can pass off to people to do. So.
And there's a question for you, Kate. Can you talk a little bit about the radius of the Hub? How far outside of Portland do you folks go?
Sure. So we actually have a permablitz in Gray this weekend, which is farther than we usually go. Normally for the permablitzes, we go as far north as Brunswick and as far south as Scarborough. And we get applications from people. Like the process has been all turned upside down, as you can imagine, in the last year and a half, but we do get requests from people from all over the state, and we just really had to like focus our energies on the greater Portland area because it was too much. But we do offer those folks, if you're in another part of the state, definitely get in touch if you want those resources to organize your own blitz.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. That was really informative.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we have Ruth Metcalf, Ainsley Lucan, and Corinna Reck, and they are all seniors at Kennebunk High School. After a year of field studies under Melissa Lutje's tutelage, they have been working in conjunction with the University of New England, the Kennebunkport Climate Initiative, and the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. They are passionate about the unique ways that sea level rise and climate change affect our lives. Ruth, Ainsley, and Corinna, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm going to share the presentation and then Ainsley will start us off. If you could just let me know if it is shared, that would be great.
That's good, Corinna. Thank you. Yep. My name is Ainsley, and Corinna, Ruthie, and I are seniors at Kennebunk High School. We're in the Gulf of Maine Studies class, and this presentation is part of our Sea Level Rise campaign. We're young with our own stories and hopes for making change, and this is our journey to slow the rise in our community and communities around us. In a survey from a previous project, we asked community members to tell us their experiences with sea level rise. Many said that it wasn't a thing and that it might be a problem for the next generation. These results surprised us and showed us that more people should know and that we want to educate. We know the environmental effects, but sea level rise is also going to affect our family homes, small businesses who are reliant on our coastline, and the unique Maine culture our coastal community depends on. We've had many opportunities as a class to talk with climate experts. In an interview, Maine geologist Pete Slavinsky says how he's worried about the impacts on people, but how most people are now starting to accept that it's occurring. Corinna, it looks like the slideshow isn't loading all the way. Oh, there we go. We've learned over the past year how sea level rise affects communities outside of our own, ranging from Eastport to Wallace to Mount Desert Island. But without statewide leadership and local action, families and communities have been forced to deal with the threats and effects on their own.
It was impossible for us to ignore sea level rise as it was consistently filling the roads and covering bridges in our own town. We knew that it hadn't always been like this, but understanding the science behind it all solidified these concerns that we already had. With impacts on coastal communities and vital ecosystems, all which make up the culture of our state, we wondered why more people were not outraged at the effects of our rising seas. Most students in our class felt very alarmed and worried when looking at these maps, because in our hometown of Kennebunk, sea level rise means that the beaches we grew up on, the roads we drive on, and the schools we go to won't even survive into the next generation. Corinna, the picture, I don't know if there's anything we can do to get the picture up, but the Gulf of Maine is unique. As we're facing both rising tides and rising temperatures. With the expansion of warming waters, sea level rise is dramatically impacting our communities here in Maine. Today, we see community leaders forced to protect all their constituents who are now at risk, proving how sea level rise is impacting far more than just our seawalls and our beaches.
Before I start, can you guys see the pictures?
No. There we go.
Okay. The threats on our economy, community, and environment are apparent. Everyone will be affected by our warming, rising waters, whether it is erosion of beaches or less snowfall up north, leading to less snowpack, crucial to the fresh water supply. Towns across the state have been left to deal with these problems alone, leaving homes in beloved traditions waterlogged and damaged by the waves. The best course of action is to assess how sea level rise plays a role in your community. As shown in these quotes, people of Maine have seen the effect of our rising seas and feel worried. With crosswalks underwater and our winters more vulnerable than ever, we need to help our state. If more communities had awareness about these issues, we could make larger impact. And while the threats to Maine society can feel overwhelming, there is action you can take, whether planting a garden, reducing food waste, or voting to support climate change laws, bills, and amendments.
Without direct action from community leaders to lead the charge towards lowering carbon emissions and curbing our rising tides while involving multiple groups in the conversation, the Gulf of Maine will continue to face increasingly dangerous threats. Our homes, schools, and roadways will continue to go underwater, as will the future of Maine's workforce, real estate, and foundational industries. The first commitment communities can make is to take these efforts town-wide, starting with supporting action to deal with food waste, one of the largest contributors to climate change, by establishing municipal composting at the town, business, and residential level. Further, our communities can come together to support the innovative Maine state legislative bills already working to combat sea level rise, such as LD 1572, a bill to analyze the impacts of sea level rise.
Finally, another thing that you can do is to advocate for student representatives to be on boards that have policy implementation power with regards to climate change, sustainability, and coastal resiliency efforts like the Climate Council of Maine. These asks are some small ways our communities can start to slow the rise.
Now, if everybody would just take a moment and imagine a world where we take steps to solve sea level rise. What do you see that is different? How can we make a change, and how can that change be seen through? What we imagine is tackling sea level rise and climate change with innovation and determination, so that generations after ours can enjoy the natural world without fear of its survival. Thank you for listening and watching the presentation. If you'd like to see more of our climate change journey, please visit our social media sites listed. And finally, please take a moment on your own to think about those questions. How can you make a difference? What needs to happen for that difference to be made? We will also post a link to a video done by some other classmates of ours and a link to a webinar that our class will be doing on May 12th.
Thank you all very much. Now, I have a question for you. We spoke a little bit earlier before the meeting started. We know that you presented to the school board, but have you presented to the select board as well?
So at this point, we've presented to the Rotaries of both Kennebunk and Kennebunkport, as well as Shelley Pingree's office and the school board, unless I'm forgetting anyone.
Well, I would love to see you present at the school board. And I was really intrigued by when you mentioned the waste management, the composting, because the Planeteers, that's one of the areas that we've been really interested in. Maybe we should team up and go after the school board together. That would be great. That's been something we've been pushing for a while, and we could use the help, I think. So thank you again. That was wonderful. Our next guest is Rachel Stearns. Rachel has a background in geological oceanography and coastal hazards. She obtained her master's degree from the University of Rhode Island and currently works at the Rachel Carson National Wildlife Refuge in Wallace as a biological habitat technician working on salt marsh restoration projects. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for that intro. I'll just get right into it and share my screen. Tonight, I'll be talking to you about collaborative conservation that the refuge is doing with the business community in Southern Maine. Just a little intro about the refuge. We are part of the National Wildlife Refuge System. It's part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we are celebrating 50 years of the refuge being named in Rachel Carson's honor. So this green business initiative that we started is sort of a part of that anniversary event as a way to sort of reach out to our community and get more involved with businesses and the local people. So what we've started this past year is Rachel Carson's Conservation Champions, Businesses for a Greener Future. And the goal of this initiative is to inspire at least 50 local businesses to implement an environmentally sustainable action of their choice at their place of business within a 1-year timeframe. We started out by talking to town select boards, Rotary clubs, pretty much anyone that would let us talk to them. So thanks for letting me talk to you all tonight. And the mission statement that's actually on our website that we have, the link to that website is at the bottom of this PowerPoint, is to just promote a general increase of awareness of ways people can be environmentally sustainable, taking small steps towards being more environmentally sustainable, and just sort of promoting that through the community where everyone is involved in one small way or another to eventually promote a large change. And working with businesses, we've had some people sign up. We'd like to get at least 50 local businesses from anywhere in Southern Maine. So sharing the coastline, I guess I should say in the beginning, the refuge owns land from Kittery all the way up to Cape Elizabeth. So we'd like to invite, any neighbors that the refuge holds land next to join, but it's really open to anyone. And we worked with a local artist who came up with this logo design that we're going to give to businesses that sign up, that you can post on your window or at your cash register, just so that people who come to your business know that you're a conservation champion and that you're doing more for the planet. So this mission really is all about taking small steps. It's about empowering people to do things that they can afford to do and not doing more than they can afford to do. But just sort of having the resources and being aware of different things that you can do to help. So these are this is a small list of examples. A lot of these things you might already know about: composting, planting native plants, taking care of invasive plant species and cleaning those up on your property, or doing something even as big as energy efficiency. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is a new program that's offered by a partner organization, the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. And they recently just launched on Earth Day a new energy audit program that provides low-cost energy audits to small businesses in the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission region, which is on this map here. It encompasses 39 municipalities. So the energy audits will be 75% off to the businesses that apply. And what energy audits do is they tell you exactly how, where, and when electricity is used in your building, and any of the costs associated with that energy use or possible energy loss from something like windows. And you can find out your eligibility if you are a for-profit business located in one of those 39 cities in the region, and you have to be a small business as defined by the Small Business Administration. And some of the conservation champions that have signed up for the program have been asking about more funding, like how can you get funding to do more than what you're doing? And so this is one small way. We're trying to figure out other resources for people, and we're planning to post more resources on the website. So that's all I have for you. I'll post the link to the Conservation Champions website in the chat. There's a lot of more information there, and if you're a business owner and you want to sign up, you can sign up right there on the website.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I love the outreach to businesses. It seems like for so many years, concern about the environment was, just hippies and academics and just ordinary people. But having the business community becoming involved and networking with them, I think is critical to bring as much of the community together on this. So it's really great work that you're doing. So thank you so much. And our next guest needs no introduction.
Oh, sorry.
It's Allison Atkins has been at the Kennebunk Free Library for the last 8 years, and in her current role for the past 3. As Assistant Director and Head of Adult Services, she coordinates adult programming and collections for the library. And I'd like to add that we know Allison also to be a certified Zoommeister. She has been absolutely instrumental in making it so that these webinars that we've been putting on could happen. So thank you so much, Allison. We are indebted to you.
Thank you, Tom. We've had lots of opportunity to practice with Zoom this last year, so let's see. All right, so our role in all this really is about connecting people with resources and facilitating education and giving people a place to gather. I'm going to start tonight with my favorite Doctor Who quote, and I won't be able to deliver it with the same energy that David Tennant does, but you want weapons? We're in a library. Books, the best weapon in the world. This room is the greatest arsenal we could have. Arm yourselves. Public libraries aren't just about books anymore, but ensuring that everyone in our communities has equal access to information, that everyone can arm themselves with the knowledge that they need to solve problems is still a key part of what we do. The mission of the Kennebunk Free Library is to inspire and enable our communities to discover, learn, and connect. We give people the tools that they need for lifelong learning and provide a safe space for the community to gather. Though this year that has meant Zoom rooms instead of in front of the fireplace. I could talk all night about the amazing things that public libraries around the state are doing that many people don't even know about, from tech help to notary services to lending board games, puzzles, and knitting needles. But tonight I'm going to focus on the tools that we provide that relate to the environment. Information is still at the top of the list, and that comes in a number of formats. Books. We have books on science, nature, gardening, weather, where your food comes from and how it gets to the grocery store, the very many things that affect or are affected by climate change. I recently got a book on how to mend your clothes so that you don't have to throw them away. Maine has a great library infrastructure that makes it very easy for libraries in the state to loan books to each other's patrons. If there's a book that we don't have, you can request items from all over Maine through our catalog. Our patrons also have access to Overdrive and Cloud Library ebook and e-audiobook services, as well as Canopy, a video streaming service, all available through our website. We also have a selection of fiction and nonfiction DVDs and audiobooks, as well as newspapers and magazines. If you're not sure what to read or watch, or where to find the information you need, librarians are happy to give advice. We also have a wonderful selection of databases available through the research tab on our website or the button on the side of our homepage. These are all compilations of information related to a specific topic. These are just a few that relate to science and nature. There are dozens of others, from gardening to cooking to genealogy. There's even one called Gale Legal Forms that lets you download blank, ready-to-use, Maine-specific legal forms like wills and bills of sale. These databases are fabulous resources, and they're available to everybody in the state of Maine. We're lucky to have such a great central library system. There's a common misconception that the internet will make libraries obsolete. First of all, internet access is far from universal in Maine, even in southern Maine. Many people still rely on libraries to access the internet. But too much information can be as much of a problem as not enough information. Librarians can help you sort out the reliable, accurate information. These are a small sample of the STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math programs that we've offered over the last few years. Sometimes we host outside presenters like Mad Science. Sometimes they're staff-led. John, our teen librarian, offers a different craft or science project each week, like this little brush bot that he did a couple of weeks ago. We're not bound by the same curriculum that schools are, so we can just do what looks like fun. And that's really our goal. In June, we'll be doing a DIY beeswax wrap program with adults. We'll have a presentation from Zero Waste Maine about reducing your household trash. Oops, sorry. Many libraries are letting patrons borrow non-traditional items these days. These are a few of ours. We have energy monitors from Efficiency Maine that allow you to track how much electricity your appliances are using. The telescope is one of my favorite items. Patrons can borrow it for a week at a time. We also have binocular stargazing kits that can be checked out. And new this month, we have a Measuring Light in the Night citizen science kit that can be checked out to allow patrons to participate in a nationwide study about light pollution. We also have passes funded by the Friends of the Kennebunk Free Library that allow free or reduced admission to other places where you can go to learn. We'd usually also get the Children's Museum and the Portland Observatory, but neither of those is open yet. But we have a good selection. If you're a resident of Kennebunk, Port Arundel, or Wells, you're eligible for a KFL library card and can borrow any of these items. If not, check out your local public library. You may be surprised at all they have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And I wholeheartedly agree that having the fun element is really essential. You gotta have that. And the expanding from STEM to STEAM with art in there is also a really great idea. So thank you. And one thing I would encourage everyone to do, I always find it hard to keep track of things that are in the chat. So you might, before the meeting closes tonight, you might want to like copy the whole chat so you can paste it somewhere. Otherwise, you might miss out on some of the really interesting links. And I see that there's the students are having a webinar coming up on Wednesday, May 12th at 7 p.m. So be sure that you get all that information for your future reference. So thank you again, Allison. And our last speaker is my friend and colleague, Andrea Kimmick. Andrea is a lifetime community organizer and educator, coming out of Columbia University's Teachers College with a focus on literacy and human rights. Andrea relies on both the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth as the basis for her work. She joined us here in Kennebunk from New York's Hudson River Valley 5 years ago when she co-founded the Planeteers of Southern Maine. Andrea, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. I'm going to try to share my screen now. Do you see a slide?
You do, but you might want to expand it to the larger size, I think, maybe.
Wait, sorry. There we go. So thank you all to the presenters. We so much appreciate the leadership of the Grassroots Fund offers New England communities. As previous seed grant recipients of yours, we are thankful not only for that support, but the way in which you make your mission manifest and your guiding principles very explicit, all of which we yearn to embrace and endorse in the work we do. And thank you, Julia. It was just a wonderful way to get to know you better. Dr. Brunicini, I hope this series of ours plays into your framework of dialogue, deliberation, and democracy. Thanks so much for having chosen Southern Maine for your work, and please consider choosing us as you continue on in that work. Woe to the Kennebunk youth, letting us know more about our own backyards and how brave you are in taking that on. I wish you were staying for another year. So, you know, if college doesn't work out, I hope your parents aren't listening. I want to be in your classroom too. That classroom that spans well beyond the confines of any school building. I also want to run with the Portland Permies. Kate, seriously, we want to be a satellite of yours, a shoot of yours. I used to be in touch with Liz Fernandez years ago. It'd be so thrilling for us to be able to keep up with you in some way, shape, or form. And I love particularly, I guess, your point about, I think it's what we Planeteers have been trying to do so much of in this particular forum on resilience, to remind people of how important it is not to keep valuing our sense of independence and self-sufficiency, but maybe put equal or more emphasis even on codependency and how we can come together and gather and share. So I hope this series is working towards that. Rachel, you at the Rachel Carson's National Wildlife Refuge, how happy she would be to see how many have embraced her work, and how your team and friends of the refuge are still fighting this climate crisis, which I wonder how much of it she actually imagined. Happy 50th anniversary to you all. And finally, Allison and librarians like you far and wide who have historically been and continue to be the wellspring for community building. Thank you, thank you, thank you for weathering all storms and partnering up with us Planeteers in this Planet Talk. I am sure that questions will arise for all of you in a couple of moments. I just want to also say, my name is Andrea Kimmick. I'm a diehard documentary junkie. And actually, Chris Fort, I think I saw you in the audience here today. Thank you for having recommended this documentary that was screened this past weekend. So who wants to be the last house standing? And also who wants to be swept away? I mean, so especially now with our being back in the Paris Accord, having Maine's Climate Action Plan to fall on, along with in Kennebunk, the Mayor's Global Covenant to reference, it's truly a time that we need to gather and gather as one. The producers of this film were so right when they suggested that hope is not a strategy. We need to listen, observe, take note, ask questions, and get informed. I know that many of you kept on referring to the importance of education. And of course, you students demonstrated how important it is to have the opportunity of quality education and do it at your own pace. And I imagine you probably directed a lot of the work that you did on your own, and Rachel Carson's for sure. We need to explore opportunities for action, whether it takes the form of research and education or legislative work and advocacy, or more physical work and protest. We can do some of this in the privacy of our own living rooms, of course, but at this time too, we Planeteers offer and expect you to join us. Join us in community action, and in so doing, have each action become that much stronger. The link to a summary of who we are can be found on our Facebook in the About section, as well as in the introductions to each one of these previous broadcasts, the links for which are being made available through the Kennebunk Free Library. Essentially, we've come together to confront climate change, to support and encourage eco-activism in all areas on all levels, to insist on environmental justice and push for renewable energies and sustainable development.
Okay. All right. Well, but thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It was extremely informative, and I'm pretty excited to look into more of the work that you all are doing. Let's see, are there any other questions? I don't think I see any. But in any case, so please do stay in touch. Let us know if there's anything we can do for you. If you have any ideas that you'd like to share that we can support you in, we would love to do that. So thanks again.